In some ways, Sean McKibbon owes his career to his mom. Upon graduating from the University of Dayton, Sean's like, oh no, where's this going with this? Sean planned to use his degree in accounting as a springboard into the FBI. That changed when his mom, who was a nurse, suggested he apply for an accounting job opening at a hospital. Sean got the job and discovered that he actually liked the mixture of healthcare and accounting. He quickly moved up the healthcare ladder and became president of University Hospitals up in Bedford Medical Center in 2003. He then also worked at the Mount Sinai Medical Center, the Metametrics Group, and the Richmond Heights Hospital. He was appointed president of Mount Carmel West Hospital in July of 2011. He enjoys the opportunity to give back to the community by structuring the hospital around its residents' needs. I read a quote in Bloomberg where Sean said, "When we look at where healthcare is going, consumerism is here. We need to have an environment people want to come to. You will see today many of the plans for the Mount Carmel health systems and how Sean is helped shaping that vision." Sean loves spending time with his wife and kids, whether it's to coach or watch his kids play sports. But Sean's biggest claim to fame is not his family or his career. You know what it is? I'm worried. I know. He's a Cleveland Browns fan. So, help me welcome Sean McKibbon to Columbus Rotary. What's that?
Yes, Mike, I did not know where that was going. So, you know, it's funny, I was in a meeting the other day and we were talking football right around the Super Bowl, and I had mentioned to someone that I was a Browns fan and that it was a sign of my optimistic approach to life. I'm the eternal optimist, and the person who I work with looked at me and said, "You're just delusional, Sean." So maybe I am delusional, but hey, maybe next year. So, Mike, thank you very much for that introduction. Yes, it was a bit of a varied path for me to get into healthcare, but I think it's certainly something that I'm really, really glad to be here. I would like to thank the Rotary Club for having us. We've got a lot of information to share with you. I certainly want to make sure that we have enough time at the end for question and answers. So I'm going to jump right into our presentation. I think everyone's aware with Mount Carmel's presence in the community, actually serving over 130 years. Our mission and ministry by the Sisters of the Holy Cross actually started down at the Franklinton campus, and we're going to talk about some of the revitalization activities that we'll have. We're going to start with talking about Grove City. One of the things that we're very proud of, in addition to our 10,900 colleagues, our physicians, and our volunteers, is one of the top 10 regional employers in the Central Ohio region, and that's something that we take very seriously to make sure that we're being a good steward of resources in the community, as well as meeting our patients' needs. And to the earlier point on consumerism, you'll hear a lot of what we've done over the last several years are related to the patient's needs. So you can see some of the partnering that we've done with our Mount Carmel Medical Group across Central Ohio, and when you look at the Mount Carmel East, Mount Carmel Grove City, and Mount Carmel West transformation, we've spent over $1 billion on meeting the community needs over the last 3 to 4 years in the Central Ohio region. So again, that's something we're very proud of. Brett Justice and his team are here, and they've done a lot of analysis related to the planning of where our patients are seeking access to care. Back in March of 2015, it's pretty hard to believe that it was almost 3 years ago that we had announced a very bold vision, a $711 million investment in Central Ohio between the Grove City, Greenfield Hospital, the Mount Carmel East renovation, as well as the Mount Carmel West revitalization. We've got about 250 days to Grove City, so 3+ years certainly flies by. So we're very, very pleased about that. So Grove City, expanding the campus, 210-bed hospital. I'll talk a little bit more about the services that we have in Grove City. New patient bed tower, very serene campus. You know, a lot of people in this next slide, and shows you, asked us why Grove City. As I mentioned earlier, our mission and ministry started in the Franklinton over 130 years ago. Well, one of the things that we reached a fork in the road, if you will, when we started looking at the transformation of the Mount Carmel West campus. With the outmigration to the suburbs in the Central Ohio market, we found that almost 50% of our patients were coming from the Grove City market. We had have a very large, loyal family practice, an internal medicine base in the Grove City market, so a primary care base. And one of the things we identified is that our patients were starting to want healthcare closer to home. So that was certainly a driving force. What we also looked at is the future of healthcare. Obviously, affordability when it comes to healthcare is something that the nation is talking about. And one of the challenges that we had with the Mount Carmel West campus is, in order to modernize the campus, was probably going to take us about $250 million. So we started saying, our patients are coming from the Grove City market. There's an identified community need, and I know it's very difficult to take a look at, but this is beds per thousand. So there's a concentration of hospital beds, if you will, inpatient beds in the downtown area. When you look at how the region or where the beds lie in the city of Columbus, it was probably designed for the population about 30 to 40 years ago, and we've seen, again, a lot of out-migration. So we decided to build the Greenfield Hospital in Grove City for a long-term sustainability to get closer to our patients, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the consumer or patient-centric for the consumers as well. The other thing that we took a look at is the configuration of the trauma systems. And again, I know in the back it's probably a little bit difficult to see, but as part of the Mount Carmel East renovation, we'll actually be moving the trauma center, our level 2 trauma center, over to Mount Carmel East later this summer. We'll actually move in August. And a lot of people said, well, why do you need to move the trauma center? Well, again, the concentration of trauma care right now in the Central Ohio market is really focused on where the population was 30 or 40 years ago. So you can see here, and again, I know it's a little bit difficult to see, there's really no trauma care on the east side of Columbus. So when very unfortunate accidents happen, the entire community has to come to a concentrated area in the downtown area. We do trauma incredibly well throughout Central Ohio with all the facilities participating in trauma care, and that's not always the case in a lot of regions, but all 4 major health systems in Central Ohio participate in trauma. So we're very excited about offering this service on the east side. So when we take a look at where we've come and gone in Grove City, we embarked on a freestanding emergency department as well as an ambulatory care center in the Grove City market to begin meeting some of those needs. That was a little over 4 years ago. We've been incredibly successful, and it was actually a litmus test to see if we wanted to make continued investments in the Grove City market. We've been able to increase our market share. We've been able to increase the number of primary care physicians that we have on board at Mount Carmel as well. So here in the bottom left-hand corner was the Grove City 1 phasing, if you will, that I had just mentioned that we implemented in January of 2014. And then you can see the Greenfield. What's interesting about the Greenfield concept as well is right now a lot of hospital construction is going on throughout the country, but a lot of it is adding on to buildings, and certainly that's very exciting when you have an opportunity to invest like we are in Mount Carmel East, but it's definitely a huge opportunity and advantage to us to build from a greenfield. So we had 130 acres off 665. We built the first phase of our program, and obviously we're adding to that. But just to give you a fact about how special this is and how excited we are, there's less than 50 greenfield hospitals going up in the country. So we're going to be bringing something to the Central Ohio market. We're going to be the first full-service hospital outside the 70 ring as well. So very, very encouraged about our investment in Grove City. Here you can see where we are today. So if any of you have been up 71 recently, it's no longer a lot of dirt. It's a living, breathing campus. As I mentioned earlier, we'll actually be relocating the inpatient services from Mount Carmel West to Mount Carmel Grove City November 4th of next year. So our team is, or I should say of this year, so our team is fast at work right now on the activation. We'll actually move the hospital in one day in about a 12-hour period. So that's another story in itself, but something that we're looking forward to expanding our services to meet the needs of the Grove City community. So when we talk about patient-centric, a lot of the construction that has been at Mount Carmel West has been over decades of growth on the Mount Carmel West campus. And one of the things that we know consumers want is, if any of you have been into a hospital recently, and hopefully you haven't, we're not necessarily the easiest place to find your way around. And that's one of the things that will be changing at Grove City. So you can see in the upper right-hand corner is a massive amount of campus at Mount Carmel West. We have over 1.1 million square feet on the Mount Carmel West campus, so it's a very big hospital. But when you look at Grove City here, and you can see the modern design of a water feature as well, I'm not going to take you through the architectural renderings, but it's, in essence, 7 stories, 2 different locations for our patients and families to enter. So it's going to be much easier for our patients to not only access healthcare services, but for patients and family members to find their way around the hospital. So something that we're very, very excited about to make this so much more consumer friendly. I think we have some views later, but this is actually where our infusion services will be for our oncology patients. So you can imagine those patients who are having significant challenges in their life, and to be able to have services offered in a very serene, healing environment is certainly going to be a huge advantage for patients while they're seeking care. Just to give you some renderings of what the new hospital will look like, these are actually renderings. As a faith-based organization, our chapel will have a very prominent entrance when you enter the building, a 2-story chapel that will feature a lot of natural light. Here are the state-of-the-art inpatient units, so when a patient gets off the elevator, this is actually where they would see. These halls probably are not doing it justice, but we'll have much bigger hallways for our patients and families to access. Here will be the main entrance of the hospital, ambulatory surgery on the 2nd floor, so when patients are having surgery, their family members will be able to quickly access and have a very nice waiting room as well. Here's our infusion center, as I mentioned, so again, a very state-of-the-art look, contemporary and modernization. Our beds, or I should say our inpatient beds where our inpatients will be housed, are 70% larger than the current patient room. So again, a much more consumer-focused area for the beds. And one of the things that we're really proud of as well is this will be a destination hospital. So where we sit on I-71, we really look at this will be a huge regional opportunity for patients coming from outside the contiguous 7-county area of Central Ohio. We really feel that we'll, based on the services that we're programming in Grove City, that we'll have a lot of mobility from patients coming from the south end of us. So when we look at what the destination for this hospital will be, level 3 newborn intensive care unit, which is in essence the highest level of newborn intensive care that you can have, maternal fetal medicine, expanding our critical care capacity. Will be increasing our critical care by about 30%. Unfortunately, as we treat patients, there's more critically ill patients in the community, so we'll be expanding to meet that need. Bariatric Center of Excellence, women's health, stroke certification. We will be doing open heart surgery in Grove City. Not a lot of hospitals in the community do open heart surgery, but based upon our clinical capability, we'll be able to do that, as along with neurosurgery, a comprehensive cancer center, and this will be a teaching hospital. Mount Carmel is the home of 6 residencies, and we will be, Mount Carmel West, that is, and we will be moving our residencies down to Grove City, so we will be a teaching hospital. So that's Grove City. What we get asked a lot about, though, is what's going to be happening to the Mount Carmel West campus. About 18 months ago, we began a community engagement process where we identified key community stakeholders. We had about 40 people in the community interviewed, a total of 90 people involved in the project, which identified about 200 ideas for the Franklinton campus. Obviously, this is a huge area of revitalization for the Columbus community, and we want to play a key role in that. We had the guardrails for 4 major outlines, if you will. Healthcare services, which we're obviously very involved in. Education, our Mount Carmel College of Nursing, many of you don't know, but is the 2nd largest nursing program in the state of Ohio with about 1,200 students and produce excellent graduates. We also have a lot of social service programs on the Mount Carmel West campus, and we look to continue that. But then as a lot of people in the community started talking about the economic development, we certainly wanted to be a catalyst for that economic development. So again, it's a little bit difficult to see, but we identified 3 major themes, if you will. The Mount Carmel-centric themes, the collaborative themes from the community standpoint, and then there was some community things, for example, housing. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, that we're just not necessarily experts in, and we don't necessarily plan on being in the housing business, if you will. So these 13 ideas really became the framework. We hired Edge, which is a local firm. They're actually right down the street. They partnered with Smith JJR out of Detroit to bring a national presence as well to develop a land planning that we had the opportunity to announce back in December. So again, this might be a little bit difficult to read, but as I mentioned earlier, we have 1.1 million square feet on the Mount Carmel West campus. And as we relocate to Grove City and revitalize the campus, the vast majority of this space actually comes down. So here it's probably best pictured in the pinkish, reddish colors. All these buildings outlined here, they actually come down to really assist us in expanding the Mount Carmel College of Nursing, as well as revitalizing the campus. You can see in this red line here, that is the outline of our footprint here on the Mount Carmel West campus. So we have a significant amount of acres, acreage, just under 40 acres. So we really feel when we talk about those four concepts of a healthcare provider, educational expansion, social services component, and being a catalyst for economic development in the area, we really think that we're well positioned. And obviously with a lot of the investment that's going on in Franklinton right now and the excitement that's going on in Franklinton, we truly want to be part of that. So just take a look at this slide. Well, actually we're moving the emergency department, so this is a little bit difficult to see as well. But number 5 here, that is the existing Green Street Surgery Center. So we are actually going to, sorry about that, we're actually going to be relocating the emergency services over to the Green Street campus, so we'll have a very modern campus for the emergency department. We know that emergency care continues to be a huge need. As much as we're trying to get patients to the appropriate level of care, emergency care continues to be a huge need in the community, and we'll continue meeting that need in the Green Street Emergency Department. That will be done in December. But if you go back and look at that other picture with all the buildings, this is what we will look like once all the demolition is done on the Mount Carmel campus. So you can see D here is a huge parcel. We envision that to be expansion for the Mount Carmel College of Nursing. Brett and his team are undergoing a Mount Carmel College of Nursing strategic plan right now to figure out how we identify growth opportunities. It's no secret that we're in the midst of a nursing shortage, so we really feel that we have the opportunity to potentially increase the enrollment on that campus by about 30 to 40%. But what we also heard from the College of Nursing students when we had an opportunity to have focus groups with them is they want much more of a campus-like atmosphere. Right now we have a lot of commuters. We only have about 75 people that actually live on campus, and we heard from the students that they really want a much more campus-like atmosphere. So the economic development will certainly be a key catalyst. A and B, we feel those could be potential housing options. We know that the market is improving. I know Trent's here, but the market in Franklinton is really improving from a housing standpoint. We have a lot more people that want to live in the community, and we feel that we have a lot of acreage. It's not something that we're looking into doing by ourselves by any means, because we're a healthcare organization, not necessarily a developer, but something that we'll actively be looking at. And then there's a lot of yet to be determined. There's been a lot of talk about H there. That's actually the Grand Ford property. There's been a lot of discussion about that. But we definitely feel, based on that pillar of being an economic development catalyst, that we have the resources to partner with the community on expanding. So you can see a visual here. This is actually from the town street looking back at the Mount Carmel College of Nursing. This is just a conceptual rendering, but here's the view right there with this building coming down, a lot more green space, a lot more opening, and creating that campus that our College of Nursing students are looking for. Here's another area. One of the things that we have planned is with the demolition, we'll actually open up State Street. Right now, State Street actually dead ends into our emergency department. So we'll actually be taking that building down. We call it the H building. So this is a conceptual, again, rendering where our Healthy Living Center is right now. Our Healthy Living Center has been tremendously successful. It's opened over 4 years ago. We've seen over 50,000 people, focusing them on health, wellness, education, prevention, very successful moms-to-be, cooking classes there, et cetera. So we'll be looking to expand that program to meet the community needs. Here you can see right here where it dead ends right into State Street. Here will be a opening of State Street, which we're very, very encouraged about as well, and have had a lot of great feedback from the community. So looking ahead, here's the transformation map, if you will. As I mentioned, November 4th is when we do relocate our inpatients. August 8th is when we relocate trauma to Mount Carmel East. But then there's going to be a period where we'll obviously have the demolition phase, but in part and parcel to that demolition phase, we'll be working with the potential development of the overall campus, from housing to looking at expanding the Mount Carmel College of Nursing as well, offering primary care, as well as outpatient services on the campus as well. From a community partnership standpoint, this was an editorial that appeared back in January. I think our team has done a great job of partnering with the community, being very transparent with the community on what's ahead, and I think it was certainly distilled down and well said in the Columbus Dispatch that the community doesn't necessarily need any more inpatient hospital beds. What the community really needs is focus on prevention, focus on wellness, trying to identify ways that we can bring down healthcare costs by focusing on the prevention, as well as our expansion of the Mount Carmel College of Nursing and the expansion of a lot of our outreach programs. So that is a brief presentation on what's going on. I really wanted to leave a lot more time for the Q&A. Is part and parcel to our community outreach efforts. Jason Coma, who's our regional director of Community Affairs, has left some takeaway brochures for you just so you have a little bit more information on the expansion at the Mount Carmel West Campus and transformation, because we do get a lot of questions about that as well. But I'd love to entertain the opportunity to engage in some dialogue with our crowd today. So questions? Yes?
Any concepts of some of the wellness programs that you'll be expanding? Any kind of, functional medicine or integrative medicine or anything like that?
Sure. So, eating healthy is one of the things that we've identified as a huge challenge in the country. When you start looking at the incidence of diabetes rates across the country and increasing the cost of care, so that is something that we really are looking to expand. From a primary care standpoint, looking to expand primary care, we really feel that if people are connected with their primary care and having annual wellness visits, et cetera, that certainly enables a much healthier lifestyle. We've been very focused on the community challenge of infant mortality, so we would look to expand our Moms to Be program as well. We have a welcome home program to help those expectant mothers once they have children and have their babies home. We actually do some site visits to the home from nurses, et cetera. From an integrative medicine standpoint, that's certainly something that's on the table. I think the biggest challenge that we've had in our Healthy Living Center right now is that we pretty much have our programming booked and we're out of space. So that's going to create another huge opportunity for us to look at some other opportunities in the community. So,
yeah. I didn't hear anything about nursing homes and facilities. I know a lot of us had to go through parents that, were through nursing homes. And in my mom's case, she had a quick heart attack. By the time they got her to the hospital, she had passed away. So, is there anything along that line that would be appealing maybe to a lot of the older folks to say, well, we'd be close to downtown, nursing home, health and wellness, nurses?
Mm-hmm. So the question regarding nursing homes, we do have a post-acute arm. We have our Mount Carmel Rehabilitation Hospital, but that's more of an intensive, shorter stay therapy for stroke patients and some other acute patients. From the nursing home business, the market is pretty saturated right now with a number of different nursing homes. It's not something that we've ruled out, but we know that there's a fair number of beds in the community. So as we look at our long-term planning, I know people have talked to us about housing options in the Franklinton community, and we're really not getting ahead of ourselves. Like I said, we're not necessarily going to develop the housing in the Franklinton community, but we haven't necessarily looked to delve into the nursing home business right now, just for the simple fact that there is a relative amount of saturation in the market.
I'm thinking almost pre-nursing homes where somebody in their 60s could be down there and transition.
Yeah, so from a continuing care community standpoint, that is certainly something that is popular across the country, where patients don't necessarily wait till they're in nursing homes, if you will, and need that level of care. They come into actually an independent living, and then there's assisted living, and then there's obviously the nursing home component. There is definitely some interest. I think one of the things that we're trying to identify from, again, a housing perspective, what is going to be in the best interest of the community, because I know that people will approach us about the continuing care communities, and we want to take a look at what's going to be in the best interest of the community.
Brian Bainbridge, I'm a new Rotarian. I'm also a board member of the Hilltop Business Association. I just wanted to thank Jason and just overall your support of the West Side. I think you guys give us money for a scholarship for a West Side graduate in Westland or West. and just also sponsored the Hilltop Bean Dinner. And that was not a question, but just more thank you for your continuing sponsorship. And I'm sure Trent can probably voice the same thank you. So I appreciate it.
No, I really appreciate those comments. Obviously, we're very invested in the community. You know, the Mount Carmel revitalization, as I mentioned earlier, that's going to be a $46 million investment in the community. So we're very excited about what the future holds. And the community's been great to us. So we're very, very excited about partnering with everybody. I know there's a question back there.
You're moving towards your 50% Grove City makeup. What's the distribution of the other 50%?
You know, there's a much lower percentage that actually comes from the Franklinton zip code, only about 3% of our patients. We really feel that based on the positioning of new growth, there's obviously we're going to be moving farther from some of our patients, but we really feel with the primary care opportunities that we have in the market, we actually, Mark Vore here is looking to expand in the Grove City market, and we really feel with the services that we're building as a destination hospital in Grove City that we're going to pull a tremendous amount of patients from the 71 South Corridor. We're also expanding our Medigold product, which is our Medicare Advantage program, and that is growing quite nicely in the Grove City market. So, you know, the net, we could potentially lose some of our patients, but we think the greater opportunity is further down south.
Have you, or would you comment on any new funding models for health care? And I'm thinking about Warren Buffett's announcement that Berkshire Hathaway and Chase and Amazon would come up with a new funding model with those three companies.
Sure. So, you know, that can be very disruptive. I think one of the things that we need to be in tune with healthcare, you know, you hear about Amazon, you hear about Berkshire Hathaway, you hear about JP Morgan Chase. Those are certainly things that get our attention. Those are very well-funded companies. They're very successful companies. They've done a great job of focusing on the community. I think one of the funding challenges that we have right now is a lot of the funding right now is what we call the cross-subsidy in healthcare. So, for example, the rates that Medicare and Medicaid pay us for most healthcare organizations, you don't necessarily earn any margin on those. On the commercially insured patients, that's where you earn your margin. So I think the complex thing is that cross-subsidy. So as a not-for-profit organization, as a faith-based organization, we take all comers. You know, our emergency rooms open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We take care of the uninsured. We have social outreach programs that cost us millions of dollars a year. So I think the conundrum will be is how do you match what a lot of the larger organizations want to do versus some of the social responsibilities that we take great pride in on being able to match that. Now, from a funding standpoint, I think everyone agrees that healthcare is too expensive. That's one of the reasons why we're really focused on wellness and prevention, because we know that the more access that patients have to healthcare, we know that the more proactive patients are with their health, it does lower the cost of healthcare. Right now, about 1% of the entire population spends 23% of the healthcare resources. About 5% spend 50%. So those are called the super users in healthcare. So I think our focus really needs to be identifying how can we take those smaller proportions of patients and start reducing the cost. So, you know, will the funding model change? I think it has to, because we all know that healthcare needs to be much more affordable. How we get there is going to be, I guess, the multi-billion-dollar question or maybe trillion-dollar question. But to your point on new entrants, large, well-funded companies, it's something that we have to pay attention to because those are the consumers, large consumers of healthcare as well. So I do think it will be disrupting, and we need to figure out how we're much more consumer-centric as well. So great question. Mike.
Is the days of a double bed room gone, or is the hospital all single bed rooms or board, or are all your others transitioning that are already done?
Yeah, so great question. Yes, Grove City will be all private. At Mount Carmel West right now, about 90% of our beds are private. One of the impetuses of the Mount Carmel East expansion as well was to create all private rooms. So yes, we are definitely, we know patients want their privacy. So again, from a consumer-centric standpoint, the days of 2 people being in rooms or even 3 people years ago are over. So these are all private rooms. So, yes.
You mentioned a little while ago your Medicare Advantage plan. There have been some recent legislative changes around what Medicare Advantage plans are permitted to cover, particularly telehealth and a few other things. Do you have any plans to make modifications there to take advantage of those new opportunities?
You know, we've already done some things in the telehealth space. So telehealth, for those of you who are not familiar, is basically, you know, with the connectivity that we've made with technology, having a physician examine a patient remotely. In the behavioral health world, this is happening a lot. We've actually had several partnerships right now because of the shortages of psychiatrists and the overwhelming number of patients that are seeking inpatient behavioral health care. So yes, I think it's going to be a huge opportunity in the future. We know consumers are going to telehealth. There's actually companies out there where you can pay $25 or $40 and FaceTime or Skype a physician, give them what your symptoms are, and you actually get a diagnosis, et cetera. So yes, I think telehealth, I know that our Medicare Advantage program is very progressive, so I definitely think that telehealth is going to be much more accessible. I forgot the exact statistic, but I want to say about 11% of the population mentioned that they had used some form of telehealth services. So that again will be a huge disruptor in healthcare, the telehealth. Saw a question back there.
I was going to ask about GPO purchases within the hospitals. Also, like the docs used to have private labels or their own labels and have a lot more effects or influence in that. So I know that's a big chunk of the expenses of the hospital. So I was wondering what your take on that.
Yeah. So one of the things that you're seeing in healthcare right now is a lot of consolidation, and it's for that very reason. Mercy down in Cincinnati just announced a venture with Bon Secours, who primarily is in the Mid-Atlantic area. We're part of Trinity Health. We're the fourth largest not-for-profit health system in the United States. We have hospitals in 21 states, over 100 hospitals, over 100,000 employees. So yes, we're seeing a lot of consolidation. You're also seeing a lot more standardization. Years ago, you know, you'd have 10 orthopedic surgeons and you'd have 10 different vendors for hips and knees and joint replacements, et cetera. We standardize a lot of that. We're down to about 2 or 3 within our organization, obviously, to leverage pricing from that perspective and leverage standardization. So I think when you see Amazon actually mentioned about getting in the hospital purchasing business, which again, that's a huge disruptor. So you're definitely seeing a lot of consolidation for that very reason. Scale is becoming very important in healthcare. We know that the reimbursement levels won't necessarily be increasing, so we think that what we're getting paid right now is probably the ceiling, and we have to identify ways to continue to generate margin by expense reductions such as supplies, et cetera. I think from a labor standpoint, there's really not much labor that is left. Everyone's pretty much right-size their organization, so it's starting to get through standardization and through supply expense reduction. So, but big side of healthcare.
The other issue with besides cost, I think, is complexity. You know, I think anybody who's had a family member in the hospital, you need a full-time family member to ride herd on it between the meds, the insurance. Is Dr. A talking to Dr. B? You know, what kinds of things are you doing to reduce the complexity for the patients?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it is challenging related to pharmaceuticals, related to outpatient testing. One of the things that we've actually done is we have a My Health record for our patients, so they can actually get results. How often, you know, does a family member come back and they say, well, geez, I don't remember what my labs were, et cetera. We actually have a My Health record application that you can log on. Obviously, from a HIPAA standpoint, it's patient-centric. We also have a retail pharmacy at St. Anne's. So if a patient is leaving any of our inpatient facilities and they need home medications, we can actually deliver those to the bedside. So the patient doesn't necessarily have to go to their pharmacy and worry about their medications. We've actually linked our electronic health record on the Mount Carmel Medical Group side with our hospital-based records. So if a physician is in the hospital and they want to look at records from their outpatient practice, they can link with that. In our oncology program, we have what we call patient navigators. Obviously, cancer is an incredibly devastating as well as complex illness, and the amount of physicians you have to see, the number of times you have to go to the hospital, you have to go to infusion, et cetera. So we actually designate a nurse for you in our oncology program that handles all setting up of appointments, medications, et cetera. We're looking to expand that into some of our other service lines like neurosciences as well as cardiac. So we know that healthcare is a very, very difficult, especially with aging family members. We're trying to make it easier. We're trying to offer more weekend and after hours appointments as well, because when you have to take a family member to the doctor, it doesn't necessarily work Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. We're expanding office hours on the weekend as well as nighttime as well. But we understand it's an incredibly complex. We're not there yet. A lot of times the regulatory with HIPAA and those types of things make it a little bit more challenging than you would like, but we definitely recognize that that's a huge challenge. Yes?
What are your plans in the 5 surrounding counties, Delaware, Union, so forth?
Plans?
Yeah, plans.
So we did open up Lewis Center, which is a integrative health campus. We have a wellness component. There's actually a fitness center, a swimming pool, freestanding emergency department, therapy area, primary care. Brett's here. We don't necessarily have any plans for Union County right now. I think we would need to grow the primary care in the northwest quadrant. That's something that we're looking to expand. We did open up the Hilliard campus, obviously not quite Union County, but on the west side, we're certainly looking to increase our footprint as well. So I think that's all.
That's
all right,
it.
Paul, great question, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you so much, Paul.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, Sean, and I'm sure he'll be around for a little bit if you had some additional questions. Those were all great questions. I look forward to seeing all of you again next Monday. It's going to be March 5th, and we're going to get to hear from Bobby Hoying, principal in Crawford Hoying Development Company, and Buckeye quarterbacking legend as well. He's going to tell us all about the Bridge Park development in Dublin that they are leading, and he might even take a couple questions about Buckeye football. So thank you for coming today, and we'll see you next week.